My name is Maren Miller. I am a library clerk at the Aurora Public Library. And part of our online programming that we're doing is we're reaching out to community leaders in Aurora to talk about what life is like right now during coronavirus 19 and how we as community members can stay engaged and inspired during this time. And today I have with me Jeneen Klippel. She is the Director of Public Relations and Development at Gateway Domestic Violence Services. Hi, Jeneen. Thank
Hello,
you so
Mary.
much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so for those of us in our community who might not be familiar with Gateway, could you give us an overview of what your services are?
Absolutely. So Gateway is the shelter that helps and serves Arapahoe County and the city of Aurora, which sits in several counties. And what we do at Gateway is what you might think of a battered women's shelter typically doing, which is a crisis line, which is 24/7, 365. We serve any adult and child that is a victim of domestic violence. The crisis line is the bridge into all of our programs. So if somebody is needing shelter or needing non-residential services, counseling, and so on, they can call our 24/7, 365 crisis line. We also have an emergency shelter, which is really the where people that are in imminent danger will flee, and we will have them in our confidential shelter. We will provide everything that they will need, all of their necessities, food, and all of that. And we also give them support and resources depending on what it is that they feel like they want to do. We offer them the choices, and then they make the final decisions if they want to go forward, maybe moving away from the state, they want to get a divorce, whatever they want to do, we're there to support them. We also have an extended stay shelter, which offers additional time, because many times people that come to the emergency shelter, they don't want to go back home because they know it wouldn't be safe for themselves and their children and their family pets perhaps, which come with them to our shelter, or they can come with them. So sometimes they might have to have the choice of being homeless or going back home. So we offer this extended stay shelter, which gives them an additional 90 to 120 days to stay, where they can get back on their feet even further there. And we help them with counseling and all of those things and other support and resources. We also have a non-residential counseling program, which is where people in the community, maybe they don't feel like they want to necessarily go to the shelter. They just need the support. And so they can get individual or group counseling for themselves or their children or both. And we just help them through whatever it is that they're working on in their situation. We also have a court advocacy program, which operates out of the Aurora Municipal Court. And there we help victims that are identified by the police when the police are called to a home, and we help them through that whole court process. If they have to, if they're going to be having a jury trial, if they're going to be wanting a no contact order, a restraining order, just whatever it is that they're trying to do. And from that program too, they can move into our non-residential counseling or our emergency shelter if that's what they decide they want to do. We also have our community program, which is where we can go out into the community. We do a free service. We'll give information on domestic violence and our services to any group, schools, civic organizations, whatever, that is interested in hearing about what Gateway does. So we have a pretty all-encompassing agency really trying to help survivors of domestic violence.
That's great. That's great. You guys do a lot. That's really, really awesome. So over the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of news articles coming out about the rise in domestic violence right now during coronavirus 19 and the stay-at-home orders that have been put in place. Not only just across the US are these numbers rising, but also across the world. There's shelters in China, Italy, Spain, the UK, and more who are documenting a significant increase in requests for services during this time. Could you talk a little bit about why that's happening right now and what that's looking like in our community?
Yes, absolutely. So unfortunately, those are true and accurate reportings. because domestic violence thrives on isolation and keeping the victim away from other people that can support them and other services, this is just a tool now with the stay-at-home orders for abusers to really take even more control over their victims. And now they don't have any break from each other. The abuser's not going to work, the victim's not going to work, and the children not going to school. So they're in complete isolation. It's the worst possible scenario that a victim of domestic violence can suffer from, and it's happening right now. And because the abuser knows that the victim doesn't really have any other options right now, or they don't feel like they have other options, they really are taking advantage of using the power and control and isolation to their advantage, and they're really controlling and abusing their victims at an even higher rate right now.
Right. And have you been seeing this increase here in Aurora and the wider Colorado community, and specifically at Gateway?
Absolutely. And unfortunately, the calls will come in waves where we'll just be inundated, and then we won't hear anything for a while, for an hour or so. And it is worrisome because we just want everybody to know that we are here. We're operating at 100% capacity. Every program is working. We're doing it in different ways, depending on the program, but we're there. We're there every day, every minute, to help victims. They can still come into shelters. So I know many people that might be suffering right now don't think that they have a place to go because they're not allowed to go to their friends or their families. Even hotels are not allowing them to go there. So they may not think there's a place to go, but I just want the community to know that Gateway is open. We're still receiving people into our shelters, into our counseling programs. So just be confident to know that we are here every hour of every day to walk with every victim.
Yes, that's great, and that's very important right now, and we appreciate that for sure, this whole community. And how has it been for staff at Gateway just trying to continue these services while having to take into account the different guidelines around staying healthy and staying safe? How has that been for Gateway?
Well, thank you for bringing that up, Maren, because, I want to give a shout out to our shelter workers right now who are going in every day. The rest of our programs are mostly working remotely, but the shelter staff is going in every day so they can be there with the people that are staying with us and needing our services and support. And, everybody that is a staff member at Gateway is dealing with what all of the community members are dealing with too. We have our own personal anxieties and fears, and our own way that we're trying to still provide for our families and get enough food and necessities that everybody else is trying to do. So it has taken a toll, but what I can tell you is that there isn't any kind of a crisis that our staff is not going to be ready to handle. And yes, we are still trying to figure out with all the guidelines. There's certainly things that we have to do in order to keep our own staff safe and healthy, but we also are trying to keep the people who are coming to shelter safe and healthy. And so there's a lot of different obstacles that come up every day, and we're just addressing them. And sometimes we have to be really innovative. We have to do things we've never done before, but that's okay because we are here. We are ready for the challenge, and we're doing our best, and we're supporting each other as a staff. We know that the community is out there supporting us too, because we're hearing from people in the community. And I just want to say thank you to anybody who's reached out with a donation, or reached out offering help, or just reached out offering inspiring words and their gratitude for us still being here. You don't understand maybe just the enormity of that interaction with us, how much that means to us. So we are incredibly grateful. We're doing our best, and we will be here because we are an essential service. We know that. We're honored to be that, and we're going to be here every day, every step of the way for victims.
That's great. That's really good to hear. You guys are essential workers, and so that's really important. I just wanted to talk a little bit about trauma and how there's a lot of different researchers and trauma experts who are kind of talking about this global trauma that we're all experiencing, and how just not knowing what the future holds in a lot of different respects, not just our health, but perhaps employment, perhaps other services that we need in community. And then also survivors already have experienced intense trauma. And so now there's this trauma, there's like a global trauma that's on top of that. And do you see that manifesting, or is there any, like, can you give us some information on maybe particular challenges along those lines that survivors are dealing with right now and how that manifests?
Absolutely. So I think you bring up a really good point, that the correlation between what average citizens who aren't experiencing domestic violence are experiencing now, with maybe some economic stressors, with some job loss, with being able to get the necessities that they need to feed their family, or just other things, the isolation of being at home and the depression that can bring on, and extra anxiety and fear. So the things that the normal citizen right now is feeling and experiencing due to the stay-at-home orders, and everybody across the world really has experienced it to some extent as well, are victims of domestic violence experience that every day of the year, and they have for years. And so it's really important to point out that as tough as it is for everybody else, imagine what it's like for a victim of domestic violence. And they say, stay home, stay safe. But what happens when your home isn't safe? And so I don't think we've even begun to see effects of the trauma that has been experienced by just anybody in the community, but definitely victims of domestic violence, and especially their children who are home witnessing this, and maybe perhaps being a victim of the abuse themselves, because we know that in 60% of cases where there's domestic violence in the home, children are also victims of child abuse. So, it's to imagine, it's heartbreaking to imagine trauma that the victims are seeing and experiencing right now, which is why it's more important now than ever. And I've been with Gateway a very long time, and I've always said it's so important for the community to rally together and support Gateway and victims of domestic abuse. But now more than ever, we're going to need, because there's going to be when we open up the cities again and we start tearing back into society in whatever way it's going to be decided that we do that safely, I think we haven't even begun to see the negative effects. And we can't even imagine the challenges that are in front of us.
Sure. As Governor Polis starts to, where our stay-at-home order officially ends on the 26th, and he's talking about reopening Colorado in stages. Is there anything you'd like to see happen at the state level right now to help protect survivors and assist them during this time?
Well, I really hope that that's one of the things that is kept in the forefront of the government's mind and our citizens' mind, is how are we going to help the people that have experienced the most trauma through this? Because there's been so much. Children are never going to be the same again, I don't think, that have experienced having their schools closed, and many of them now are just locked away, depression, and more suicide thoughts. I've heard that. And, it's just so much to do, and so many things to keep in mind. And so, I don't know the answer. I wished I had the answer, but I hope that we can keep this in the forefront of everybody's mind. There's going to be there's so much damage that's been done by this virus, and so much good that also is coming out of it as well. So if we can keep that balance and keep moving forward, and keep people in the forefront of our mind that have experienced the trauma in even a greater way than ourselves, reach out to your neighbor. If you hear screaming and yelling things from next door, don't be afraid to call 911. Don't be afraid to reach out and be that bridge and to help for somebody. Would never recommend going and knocking on the door and getting involved personally, but there's a lot of things you can do. And once this is all over, I'm excited to see if that, I'm hoping that the community will just stay as connected as it seems we're trying to do right now. Being that we're all locked in our homes, I feel that we've had the most connection with each other in some ways during this time. And I really hope we don't lose that. I really hope we keep our humanity in the forefront and just continue helping people in the community that really need us.
Awesome, yeah. And going off of that, how can community members who want to be more involved, how can we support Gateway and then just survivors in general during this time?
Well, during this time, I mean, the best thing that could help us right now is, of course, what everybody knows is money. We are seeing greater need for helping the people that are reaching out to us. There's a lot more need for the people that are our non-residential clients, so they're not living with us, but now in our shelters, but they're in need. So we're really struggling to support everybody. So of course, financial donations, when this is all done, and we can get settled, give us some time. We'd love to have in-kind donations and volunteers that are willing to help in whatever way that they feel is their best gift that they can give. And helping survivors the most is, like I said, don't be afraid to call the police. Don't be afraid to help somebody that you might know that's in that situation. Please believe them. If somebody has reached out to you and expressed that they're a victim of domestic violence, trust me, they are. Nobody would ever talk about that and come to somebody with that kind of information if it wasn't true, because it's very humiliating to have to stranger or to even a friend or family member or neighbor and talk about the most intimate details of your life when they're negative like that. Nobody's going to do that unless that's really happening. If children are talking about it, then it's happening, and we need to believe them. We need to equip ourselves with resources. We don't ask anybody in the community to be an expert on domestic violence and an expert on helping victims, but just know where they can reach out, because at Gateway, we have 30 people that work there, and we're experts on helping victims of domestic violence. And we can help do that with the help of the community supporting us. And if you can support victims, just a simple thing of remembering our crisis line number, or just remembering our name, Gateway, Google us, help somebody that's reaching out. Please don't judge them. Please don't ask them why they're staying. Please don't tell them that you would be doing something differently if it was happening to you. I hope you don't ever have to experience it, but you never. Victims, trust me, they don't necessarily want the relationship to end. They want the abuse to end. And they need our support. They need us to believe them, and they need us to not judge them.
Well, that's great. And I just want to say thank you again so much for agreeing to interview with me today and being here and giving us all this really important information. It's very important for us all to know, and it's inspiring to know that Gateway is out there really on the front lines of this crisis, helping the most vulnerable in our community. So thank you so much for being with me today. And I hope Gateway continues going strong, and we will of course include a link to your website if anyone is able to give a donation. That would be great. And yeah, we will see you on the other side.
That's right, Maren. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, have a good one.